Short story by Paul McCann. The Wedding Party Parade. Jack was the owner of the vineyard, and after realising how much of his life it demanded, he decided to hire a manager to run his business, in order for him to find some time looking for romance. Because he was worth a small fortune, Jack had been very busy most of his life, amassing the fortune that he had. But he had to be very careful about telling anyone that he was interested in about how wealthy that he really was. And so he found himself playing out the poor man's role in a small inner city dwelling for a while, where he went then to his regular spots where boys and girls always met, but soon discovered that most of the people there were only interested in a one-night stand. Jack was looking for something more lasting, a relationship for a lifetime with someone, and that was difficult to find out there in the single social pub and club scene. Not that he needed the money, but he took on a job as a cleaner in a very busy shopping mall in the hope of maybe meeting someone. If you're generally searching for love, it does find you. Jack had made some nice contacts with a few girls who worked in some of the shops in the mall. There was one in particular who took his interest. They had lunch one day, which later led to dinner, and then afterwards to the theatre. Tanya really liked Jack's company, and the love had found a home in Jack's heart. Tanya was involved with a local theatre company and asked Jack for some help when they were setting up lighting and props for a new production. Although he had never been involved with the theatre, Jack was a quick learner and soon became very proficient behind the scenes. He took Tanya by surprise one evening after the production had finished its first run. He asked Tanya if she would marry him. Without really knowing that much about him, Tanya said yes. Now Jack was able to explain who he really was. Tanya was speechless, but it never changed anything about how she felt about him, and they were both very much in love. So Jack and Tanya went shopping for wedding rings. They set a date for the wedding, and Jack had a great idea for a function afterwards. It was a beautiful morning, and she walked up the aisle. She looked like an angel, dressed in pure white, shimmering with light and radiance around her. She walked to where he stood waiting there to be by his side. They stood together as Father Tony, the parish priest, welcomed everyone and blessed the congregation. With words and in song, they prayed and the rings were blessed. The candles were lit and the register was signed, and they kissed. On the way back down the aisle, he whispered to her, "I've got a little surprise for you. Come away with me." He grabbed her by the hand and led her out of the church and across the road where a garden maze stood. Then he led her up and down pathways and around the maze until eventually they were in a large clearing in the garden that was decorated with balloons, streamers, and there were signs suspended from tall concrete statues. The signs said, "Congratulations." He took her by the hand to a large garden seat, where they sat underneath a tall oak tree that provided shade from the bright sunlight. Up above in the sky, a jet flew past and did a few quick loops, and as it did, some smoke poured out from behind. The smoke was red in colour, and she screamed, and then she held him. Her face was aglow with excitement as the jet trail drew the shape of a heart across the sky. In a short, steep descent, the jet headed towards the ground and did a few passes over the garden where they sat. Then the wedding show parade began. There was an island in the middle of the garden, surrounded by a moat. On the island were funny little elephants, all running around, and there were little girls dressed like fairies on the elephants' backs. As well as the elephants, there were pigs on leads dressed up in stripy suits tied to pillars near the moat's edge. Then a small man in a red suit with a tall hat made his way to the middle of the garden and grabbed a microphone and welcomed the bride and groom. Some props were introduced from outside, and in a few minutes the scurrying back and forth with boxes and all kinds of crazy things, little houses and merry-go-rounds and pillar boxes and clowns and little animals all dressed up. Then a funny-looking little man lifted the microphone and he said, "Please enjoy, if you will, the wedding party parade." And funny little men dressed like fishermen emerged and stood beside him on the ground. Accompanying them on a rising platform was a man playing the pipes, and a little man with an organ came around on a truck, and a platform lifted about 10 feet in the air from the ground, and it stopped. And on the platform the fishermen threw their fishing rods together over the edge, and on the line that had already got plastic goldfish on it, where the goldfish hovered over a box on the ground, where a large cat sat with a hat on her head, jumping to try to catch the goldfish on the lines of the funny little men. Beside the fish there was other little butterflies suspended from strings held from the fishermen's lines, and the cat in the box was tied to a tree. There was a little house with a mouse on the roof, with an umbrella that stuck in the chimney, and little aeroplanes attached to that as it spun around and around. Strange little men emerged dressed up in monkey suits, playing button accordions tied to their legs. A boy came dressed like a puppet and danced away happily to the tunes that he played. A group of girls dressed in leather marched past with their hair at least 6 feet of length trailing behind them. These were followed by football teams on pogo sticks and clowns on bikes, a white horse with a rider back to front, sailing ships on wheels, a postman inside a sack on the back of a cart pulled by a hippopotamus, and around they went as garden seats were brought as family and friends arrived, making their way for the rest of the show. Long tables and bench seats were placed in rows as the bride and groom were joined by their guests, and the party began. There was music and dancing, and the banquet was laid out from food from all over the earth with exotic taste to cater for all and every culture and creed on the planet. Music and dancing and entertainment was as good as it gets at the order of the day on any wedding day. A private jet landed at the end of the day to take the bride and the groom on their honeymoon. Just before they boarded the plane, a little red truck made its way around the garden with 6 men playing trumpets from the back of the truck. Following this, a cascade of driving-coloured soapy bubbles ushered out from a mechanical machine as the plane lifted off into the sky, and the bride and the groom were now on their way to spend the rest of their lives together, very much in love. And they lived ever after until the end of time, as happy could be. That's the end of the story.